You're watching Gearz.
Hey, welcome to Gearz and our Perfect Additions project truck. Now, the thing that makes this project so unique is that everything we're doing to this truck comes from you. That's right, we started with a list of all the things that you said you wanted to see us do to a daily driver work truck. And of course, we added some criteria of our own. First of all, everything has to be fairly simple to do. Second, it has to be something that you can get down at your local auto parts store. And third, everything has to serve a real purpose. So we hooked up with our buddies at NAPA Auto Parts, and the Perfect Additions truck was born. Now, so far, our attention has been on the business end of the truck, and we started out by rolling on a bed liner. Then we added a headache rack to protect the cab. We threw on a bunch of auxiliary lighting so we could see what we're doing at night. We bolted in a transfer tank and a pump to carry extra fuel. Then we put on a whole bunch of toolboxes so we can carry extra junk. And then we finished it off with a generator air compressor combo so we can blow air and make sparks whenever we want. Which leaves us with a bed that will handle virtually anything, except maybe some extra cargo. Now, with the bed ready to go, it's time to turn our attention to the other end of the truck. See if we can do something about that big diesel engine. Come on. Okay, when it comes to late model vehicles, there's three main areas where you can pick up some pretty substantial gains. The first is an air intake system, the second is a computer programmer, and the third is a performance exhaust system. And if you don't think you can put these in yourself, we're about to show you that you can. Now, the first thing we're going to tackle is an air intake system. We're going to be using this high-flowing unit from K&N that's designed to bolt right in place of all your stock restrictive junk. And according to their dyno numbers, this will give us about 15 extra horsepower, about 30 extra foot-pounds. So the first step is to get rid of the stuff that's under the hood. Okay, with the stock air box and inlet out of the way, we're going to bolt in this new heat shield assembly. We're going to follow that by installing this new intake tube. Now, even though it looks different than what came out of there, it's going to drop right in here and fit perfect. Now, also notice we're using all the stock sensors. That way we're not going to turn on any kind of check engine lights. We're not going to void any warranties. We're just going to get a lot more cool air into the engine. Next, we'll just tighten everything up and reconnect all of our electrical. Of course, the final step is to put on the filter, and that's it. It really is that easy, and you'll definitely feel the difference when you start driving. Okay, the next modification is the computer programmer. And one like this from Bully Dog has been around for a while, and it's a great way to pick up 120 horsepower and 240 foot-pounds just by reprogramming your computer. The cool thing is, you're not even going to get dirty putting this in. It's so simple. So once you've downloaded the program onto the unit, you're ready to head to the vehicle. Come on. Just plug the programmer into the vehicle's diagnostic port. Then follow the directions on the screen. And in a few minutes' time, you'll be all downloaded, ready to go just by punching a few buttons, making this the easiest way to add power to a late model computer-controlled vehicle. Okay, the last part to go on is the exhaust system. And this is the most difficult of the three, and you will get dirty putting this on. But it really is something that you can do in your driveway on a set of jack stands. But if you've got a floor lift, it's going to make it a lot easier. So we're going to get this thing up in the air and show you what we got. Hey, welcome back to Gearz, where today we're taking this 2008 Ford Super Duty to the next level by doing some modifications to that big diesel engine. Now, so far, we put on a high-flowing air filter and we've reprogrammed the computer, both of which have given us more horsepower and more torque. Now it's time to get up underneath this thing and deal with the exhaust system. Now, stock exhaust systems are notorious for being restrictive, so opening one up and getting more flow is always a good thing. Now, we're going to be putting on a catback system, which means we're going to replace everything from here on back. And taking off a rusty exhaust system can be a little bit of a challenge, so here's some tools that can help you out.
Tool Tech, brought to you by Cornwell Tools, the choice of professionals.
When you need to remove an exhaust system, it would be great if you could just unbolt it and take it out. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way because they usually are rusted in or they're clamped in and you need to cut them out. Now, one of the best tools you can have in your toolbox is a hacksaw. But to cut out an exhaust system with that's a little difficult, especially if you're laying on your back in the driveway. So, good tool, not the best choice for an exhaust system. Now, if you have an air hammer, that's great because there's all kinds of special chisels available that are designed to slide right in underneath that top piece and split it so you can easily remove the pieces. The problem with an air hammer is that you don't always have the room to maneuver it where you need it, and you need the compressor and all that goes with that. Okay, the most common tool for cutting an exhaust system out is a Sawzall, because that thing will cut tubing, it'll cut brackets, it'll cut rubber bushings, it'll cut out anything that you need to get rid of. However, just like the air chisel, that thing is big, so you can't always maneuver it where you need it. But about 90% of the time, you can make that work. Okay, the last cutter is a tool that's built specifically for cutting exhaust tubing. Check this out. Now, I know this looks like a chain on a handle, but it's a lot more than that. Look closer. You can see there's a bunch of rolling cutters here that are designed to go around a piece of tubing and then connect to the handles. Now, once you have it connected, you can move the cutter anywhere you want on the pipe. Once you decide where you want it, you just grip the handles and roll the cutter. This is one of the best tools for cutting exhaust pipe in a confined space because you only need a little bit of movement to cut the pipe. And hopefully this shows you that there's more than one way to get old exhaust out from underneath a vehicle. And having these tools at your disposal is a great way to make short work of what could be a really nasty job. With the old junk out of the way, the new system just slides in one piece at a time. Now, once you have everything in place and adjusted how you want it, just go back and tighten all your clamps, and you've got yourself a brand new catback exhaust system. And judging by the size of that tiny new muffler, we're definitely going to hear this truck more than we used to, which is always a good thing. All right, the next thing we're going to turn our attention to is the suspension, because we would like to put a little bigger tire on this thing. Now, obviously, a 49 would be awesome, but that's really not daily driver stuff, although it would be really cool. But what is daily driver is 35-inch tall tires. And it doesn't take a lot of lift to put a 35 on a late model truck. So we're going to put on this Daystar lift kit that has these urethane coil spring spacers to give us 2 inches of lift in the front. And it's got blocks for the rear to raise the rear and level the truck out. Then, of course, you've got shocks and U-bolts to finish everything off. Now, you can see by the amount of parts here on the table, this is not very hard to put on. Check it out. With the front end in the air and the wheels removed, we need to unbolt the sway bar end links, the brake line bracket, then remove the shocks. Now just lower the axle down until you get enough slack to remove the spring. Then just replace the stock spring isolator with the new taller one and reinstall the spring. Now, you may need to use a spring compressor to get enough room, but on this big solid axle Ford, we're not going to have to. Now, just jack the axle back into place, bolt the brake line bracket back on, and reconnect the sway bar. Finally, install the new shocks. And that's it. 2 inches of lift on the front, and the only special tool that you might need is a spring compressor. And most auto parts stores will rent that to you. Oh, and hand cleaner. You will need some hand cleaner. Hey, we're back, and if you're just getting here, you're probably wondering what is up with all these parts laying around and that big Ford up there on the lift. Well, we're in the process of loading it up with some of the best parts that the aftermarket has to offer, like an air intake system, a computer programmer, a catback exhaust, and a simple 2-inch lift, just to show you what can be done with a daily driver. Now, at this point, we're going to turn our attention back here to the bed, because even though we put some extra lift blocks on the rear, that doesn't do anything to help us carry an extra load. And as you can see, we have added some extra weight to this bed. So now we're going to show you a great way to help your suspension carry that extra weight. Come on. This is the Load Lifter 5000 system from Airlift, and it's basically a new take on the old helper spring. And instead of using a steel spring, it uses an airbag to help control that extra load. Now, to control the airbag, of course, you have a compressor and airlines and electrical and a bunch of hardware and a whole pile of brackets. And I know some of you are looking at this going, what? I thought you said this was easy, man. It is actually pretty easy. Just like a puzzle goes together a piece at a time. Here's how to do it. First, we need to mount the upper brackets to the inner frame rail. Next, we'll put the airbag and the lower bracket assembly together, utilizing those big old piles of hardware and brackets. Then we'll bolt the whole assembly to the factory bump stop block on the axle. Now, this is a strong piece, and it'll support the extra weight with no problem. Finally, we'll bolt the airbag to the upper bracket and tighten it all down. And that gets our airbag mounted. Now, let me show you how this thing works here. Notice that we still have the stock leaf spring in place, and then the airbag is mounted back where the original bump stop was. Now, it is really important that you realize that this is not a full airbag suspension used to raise and lower a vehicle, and you're not going to get the ride quality of a full airbag suspension. This is a helper spring. This is designed for when you overload the bed and it sags down. You put air in the bags, it levels the truck, and it stabilizes the load. So this is great for hauling heavy loads or pulling big, heavy trailers. Now, you can stop right here and run air lines out the back that you can fill up at a service station, or you can put on an onboard air compressor, which is what we're going to do. Now, at this point, you might be wondering about some of these parts, because these aren't exactly the parts that you'd normally find at an auto parts store. These are more enthusiast parts, and that's the whole idea behind the Perfect Editions concept, to offer you everything that you might need, from this stuff to transmission pans to limited slip differentials to paint that'll convert rust, anything that you might need all in one place. Now, there are a couple of things that you can't pick up in an auto parts store yet, and that's wheels and tires. Now, we've already shown you our 35-inch tall grabbers that we got from General Tire, and this is a nice all-around tire. It'll give us great traction when we need it, but also give us a lot of miles on the highway. For wheels, we hooked up with the guys at BMF Wheels because when it comes to heavy-duty truck wheels that look good, they have got it dialed in. Now, this is a wheel called the Rehab, and it has just the right amount of polish and black to really set off the design. And the 20x10 size is going to fill out the tires and the wheel wells of our truck just right. And that's it. We've added power, performance, stance, and style in just a short period of time and without spending a fortune. And it all goes really well with what we did before in the bed. Yeah, this is turning into a really cool truck. But we're not done yet. There's still a lot more we can do. For example, this paint, got to do something about that. Don't like the two-tone. The grill's all beat up. The bumpers have got to go. Got to have a winch. We need different fender flares. These side steps have got to be replaced. Oh, there's all kinds of stuff to do.
Now, quick tip. Brought to you by E3 Spark Plugs. Born to burn.
You know, one of the most exciting things about getting a new project vehicle is getting it home and tearing it all apart. But if you pulled it out of the woods or a field or even a barn, you need to stop and do some hunting before you tuck it away in your garage. Why? Because something like this is the perfect habitat for every creepy, crawly thing that you can imagine. And they would love nothing more than to go home with you and take up residence in your nice warm garage. Take a look. Areas under the hood and in the inner fenders, under the seats. Smells like pee in here. And in the trunk should be prodded thoroughly before you load it on the trailer, or you could end up doing the snake dance in your driveway. Now, a lot of people think that if you just walk around the vehicle, make a lot of noise, bang on the side of it, that'll chase all the critters away. And that might work for some of the larger furry animals, but that's not going to work for snakes. For example, this Buick was partially disassembled and then dragged out of its resting spot and carried off by this very loud front end loader. But it wasn't until we opened the trunk and started prodding around, look at that, big old snake, that the resident snake decided he'd had enough and exited the car. Come on, Steve Irwin, pick that thing up. Oh. Crawly things like ticks, chiggers, and ants are other things you need to be aware of. Because even though they aren't as potentially dangerous as a snake or a possum or a scorpion, they can sure drive you crazy if you get into them. You know, I've seen everything from spiders to snakes to scorpions to squirrels to skunks to rabbits, you name it, in a project vehicle. And one thing is consistent. Every time you find them, they are not happy to see you. So, spending a little bit of time with a stick, prodding around, making sure they get out of the vehicle before you load it on the trailer will keep you from having to chase them around your garage. If you'd like to learn more tips to make your life easier in the shop, check out the tips page on the website.
And now, what are you working on? Brought to you by Carrera, Motorsports at Home.
Today's What Are You Working On comes from John Wilhite from Wellsville, Kansas. And John wanted a big truck, similar to what we've been working on today, but he wanted it to be classic, a big classic extended cab. And since those basically don't exist, he knew he was going to have to build his own. So he started with this, a 1947 1.5-ton Chevy cab and chassis. Then he bought a 92 Chevy 2500 extended cab and chassis. And then wait, that's not it. Then he bought a 97 3500 dually chassis. And then he grafted them all together in one big glorious pile of metal. Once that was done and the 350 Chevy and the 5-speed tranny were in place, the 47 cab was mounted to the Frankenstein frame. But one cab's not enough. Remember, he wants an extended cab. So he picked up an additional 54 cab and grafted it to the back of the 47 for a classic four-door cab. Check this out. This thing is awesome. Now, of course, the bed, he had to hand fabricate the bed. That he built into a car hauler so he can use it not only in his towing business, but also to haul his vintage race car around. Now, he says it gets 11 miles per gallon, rides like a Cadillac, and gets tons of attention. Yeah, I bet. Since it's the only one in existence, I bet people flock all over that thing. So, John, great project, man. And to recognize that, we hooked up with our buddies at Carrera. We're going to give you one of these race sets so you can challenge your buddies. You're obviously into racing, so you're going to have a good time with this. Also, we're going to give you one of our project build books so you can log what you did to that truck. And we're going to set you up with one of our new Gearz t-shirts, because with a project like that, you are definitely a gearhead. Now, for the rest of you guys, if you want to get your project featured on the show, get into some of this, you got to go to the website, go to the Gearz Nation page, and fill out a profile. We pull all of our What Are You Working On, all of our features right off of that page. Also, don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and all that other social media stuff, because that's where we can show you the stuff that we can't legally put on the show. All right, it is now time for you to get out there and start working on something. We'll see you next time.